Oh.
This is the Team Objection Podcast for, there's a camera that's not on. Well,
It's okay. It's there you're doing purpose for a surprise reveal.
These are the things that'll happen when you're not able to get prepped before
Surprise
live.
reveal. Mikhail's in your living room.
For February 7, 2023, episode 563, we've talked about it for a few weeks, but there's been other business to get to. But now it's time to review Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I put up an order that you can't see if you're listening, but you can if you're on YouTube. And I started with the bad. We'll talk about why in a minute. But any other business you want to get off your chest before we jump in? Anything else?
I don't know if this format's going to work, but I'll try.
I'll also try.
I'll do my best.
I'm not asking you to rank everything 1 to 9 right now off the top.
I know.
But I don't know if I'm even ready to, like...
We're going to try
think
it.
about it.
We're going to try it.
We'll see how I framed it when we get there.
I thought of some headlines for... if you're going to review, you have a headline at the top, kind of gives you an idea of what the review is going to be about.
Mm-hmm.
So the two I thought of, more like no came on, but that is not my favorite. I think the one, there's no pun, it's just the magic is gone. Pokemon Scarlet Violet. The magic is gone. And now we're going to get into it.
Yeah, I don't want you to use any puns. I don't want you to stoop to IGN's level. IGN that can't even decide how they want to write their Hogwarts Legacy review because they gave it a 9 and wrote it like a 7. Confusing. I don't even have a horse in the race, so I don't really care one way or the other. I just know it doesn't match what they wrote to what they scored it. So.
I actually am going to play that now, but we can get into that.
It's getting really good reviews, so that's big time
good.
if you're a big Potter fan.
That's all I was waiting for.
I'm going to probably look into it now, but...
So we'll see.
I legitimately have a few questions about, are they only giving this to Harry Potter fans to review? Because that seems to be the tone I'm getting from most of the reviews so far. I'm not even sure what that means. I'm just curious if that has an effect on the score. What does it mean for me who doesn't know jack shit about Harry Potter? Should I play it? I don't know my Leviosa from my Leviosa, but, I might try it. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good question. But we'll do that one with Dave, because Dave knows 3 things in pop culture, and one of them is Harry Potter.
We'll save it.
Yeah, we got to do it with Dave.
Who's not here, by the way?
Who's not here? Who said he would be and lied?
I got to tell you, I 100% knew he was not going to be here. Because he said, yes, I will. And then he was like, maybe. And I was like, no, he's not going to come. Something's going to come up on the day of, and he's going to be like, I'm sorry. And then that's exactly what happened.
We all kind of have tells like that. You do that sometimes as well, where it's you'll either commit to something or you'll be like, we can see. And if we get to the we can see, it's like, okay, so that's basically a no then. So it's the same with Dave. He has that kind of language to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, we're going to jump into the bad. Why? Because, as you've seen with the screenshot, if you're on the YouTube side, we talked about it even just in our first impressions, the litany of different issues with this game, especially on a technical level. People having horribly contorted bodies, having duplicate Pokemon show up for no reason, lighting effects just clipping in and out, just all sorts of problems. So I think we should start there. There are other issues with this game as well, but I think the elephant in the room is the fact that this doesn't seem like it was ready to ship when it did.
Yeah.
No.
I don't know if we're gonna get to the rest of the stuff, starting with the bad. But honestly, here's the problem: all the glitches and shit. It strikes me as a game that was not ready, that did not get the care it needed, and it was the least egregious thing in the list of bad things. There's a lot worse than the glitches to me of what impacted my experience. Michaela, what do you think?
Yeah, I was pretty lucky in that I didn't experience too many glitches. There was one in a cutscene that was really bad, where it took up like, I think, a minute. It was just glitching out. Like my person, like I think I came into a base from like the wrong side, so it just fucked up the whole cutscene. But my character was like trudging through water for like a minute before the cutscene even started. I was like, do I need to like restart the game? Because this is kind of awful. But so luckily that was the only really bad one that I experienced. But yeah, this game just feels very kind of slapped together. You can tell it's not ready. And for a game that came out in 2022, 2023, that's really not acceptable, because like, and you can't even blame it on the Switch. Like, the Switch is maybe not as powerful as something like the PS5 or Xbox, but we have games like Breath of the Wild and Fire Emblem that perform really well. So, like, the fact that this game is just so gnarly, it's like, you guys, you're allowed to take more time. And I think this just proves they need more time to develop these games, because it was a mess.
I don't know that it is time. So, I think it's part of it. I think it's bad decision making too. So I'm just going to get into my list, and you guys can help direct me where we can. So the school is pointless. That's the first thing. You get to go to this academy, and you're like, cool, Harry Potter for Pokemon.
I completely forgot it existed.
To Harry Potter. and you start the school, you're like, cool, this is really great. And your first assignment is leave the school. And you don't ever have to come back.
It's not required. Yeah. I actually legit forgot about it until like way later.
Very little of the world. I know the Team Star thing is kind of connected to the school, but also like it is sort of irrelevant. Like, they don't need to be. Like, again, I'm going to go to Fire Emblem. You look at Three Houses. It's very like the school is the whole thing. Yes. Like it or hate it, it's ingrained in
almost too much, but
Sure.
there's no question why it's there.
Yeah. This is like...
And by the way, I'm just going to interrupt your flow real quick. I didn't say it. No, that's fine. It's not even about this, because I'm saving my stuff for the good section, which we will have time to get to. There will be spoilers. I didn't mention it in the intro. We're going to go into every facet of this game, because the end game is like the only salvageable part for me. So like, just be warned now, if you haven't dipped out, we're going to be talking about the entire game here. So everything is like, if you're trying to save it, first of all, it's been 2 months. Second of all, just be warned. Okay, go ahead.
So non-skippable cutscenes just drove me crazy. And we don't need to get into every point, but here's why. For a game that cares clearly so little about premise and story and characters, to then force me to sit through every single cutscene, every single terrestrialization animation is just like, and it's little stuff like that stacks up about some ways I feel like they care about my experience, and there's some smart updates, and then in other ways I'm like, you're making this as miserable as possible. Can we, as a segue to the story though, can we talk about like...
Sure.
It's never... Pokemon is never going to be, oh my God, God of War moved me, but Pokemon brought me to tears. Like, it's never... it's never going to be that. Mm-hmm. But the plot or the trappings, the premise, whatever you want to call it, it's as boring as it's ever been and unengaging as it's ever been. And again, like, doesn't need to be great, but I look at like Black White. The story there carried me easily through the whole game, and I was intrigued and I was interested.
Yep.
We're just like, we're not even trying anymore on that level.
Yeah.
And I like the lower stakes. We don't need world-ending events every time. But we're just moving in the wrong direction on that.
Yeah. And like, none of the paths are particularly good. So they give you like these 3 different options. Like, you can either do a treasure hunting, whatever the fuck that was, or something, and then like the champion route, or
you have the team route.
The team route, yeah.
The Titan route.
Yeah. There was some verbiage about like a treasure hunt recently when I was playing. I was like, I don't know what that even is referring to. But like all 3 routes are just very bare bones. Just not very engaging. I guess I appreciate the effort of putting in different paths, but like none of them are particularly good. So,
well, so let me say one thing really quick. On the story, you could say, well, they're never going to it's never going to be a thing in a Pokemon game. And like, that's fine, but that's still like not a defense. Like if you were to say Rise of Skywalker, well, they were always going to cave into fan demand. Well, fine. That doesn't mean it's not worthy of criticism.
Sure. Yeah,
like the
absolutely.
fact that it's always there doesn't now make that thing good.
Totally. Yeah, it doesn't excuse them
Yeah.
from just doing it over and over again.
So that's like get it together. On the 3 paths, Kayla,
Mm-hmm.
I agree with you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's break those down really
Yeah.
quick. So you have the Titan fights.
Yeah.
Probably the most like straightforward.
Yeah.
You go to a place, you fight a thing.
Yeah.
And it was fine. It was not very time consuming, really, right? Like
Yeah,
you
it
just
was
chalk
actually
it down and
pretty
you fight
quick.
it.
Yeah.
And there's a little puzzle before it that's not worth much time.
Yeah.
Like
Can
you
I
have to
even call
dodge.
it a puzzle?
You got to dodge Cocoa Puffs, and if you can do that, then you can fight the Titan.
Well, I mean, you're right, but then like what would and the fish one, you have to find the right fish. Yeah, so you're right. On the Rolly one, that was just you walk up to it and fight it.
Yeah, I seem to remember that
Unless
too.
it was like a puzzle of like trying to like because he's gonna roll, so you have to like predict it. But I didn't really have to do that. I just kind of like found him, the guy in the desert.
There was
so,
only so many options. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I just kind of ran through, and it wasn't very hard at all. There was
Yeah.
no element of like, oh no, where do I go now? It's just like, okay, follow the tunnels.
So that was fine. The gym experience was good. I mean, I didn't really care for going at it in any order, and I think we'll get to that more later.
Mhm.
But like, it's the gym experience. Like, you know what you're getting. Some of the characters were kind of interesting. I liked Grisha, and I liked
Yes.
Larry.
Everybody
Yes.
likes Larry.
Larry and
Yeah.
Grisha are my favorite gym leaders this gen, easily. They're cool.
Because she was an asshole.
I think it's a
But I
he,
liked
actually.
her. Oh,
It's a he.
It is a he.
Mhm.
his face is covered. No idea.
He's a mistake to make.
This person's cool. And I said so when they quizzed me later. They were
Mhm.
like, who's your favorite? And I was like, this person.
Oh,
This is
yeah.
kind of true of just about any generation. Maybe like Red, because we're so ingrained with that as Pokemon. You can name all 8 gym leaders, but if you asked me to name more than 3 of the gym leaders from XY right now, my family would be dead. I would have
have no
nothing to
idea.
stop it from happening, because usually it's like there's a couple standouts and then the rest are all sort of forgettable.
Mhm.
So it was about on average for this game as far as the rest of the series. Because again, like we know the ones from Red Blue, but I mean, fuck, 2 of them became like long-term party members. So of course we remember more of them.
I'm never going to forget like Rhyme. Probably for... I like that there's more people of color in Pokemon games, but like I think there's 2, maybe 3 black characters, and one of them is like, I'm hip hop. I'm only going to talk in hip hop slang the whole time. Like, well, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we're trying. So that was fine. The Team Star shit, I really hated, and it was a grind to get through.
And it was, yeah, like there were some difficulty spikes, at least when I was doing it, because I was trying to speed through it at the end. And then the last one, I was like, what the fuck? Why is this so hard? I don't even like this. Like, this is just miserable.
Hated it.
Yeah.
I hated whatever they were trying to experiment with. Like, you throw your Pokemon out into the world and they fight like alongside you. Didn't work. It was just busy work. That's it.
Mhm.
And the fight at the end, but the fight were very similar. You fight the car and whatever. And
It's very, like, all 3 routes are very, very formulaic. And, like, normally in previous Pokemon games, they're all kind of formulaic because you have the gyms, but that's the only part that is the formula, you going to the gyms. This has, like, 3 different routes that you can do. All of them are extremely repetitive.
yeah.
So it just kind of, it's not the most exciting or creative thing I've ever seen.
Here comes pushback number 1.
Great.
Here we
it
go.
comes.
I was hoping we'd get more.
Because I'm going to save some of the stuff I have for the good later. But this one in particular, as it was happening, I thought was kind of funny. The fight 30 Pokemon for no reason was an absolute waste of time. It's awful.
Mhm.
It's garbage.
So
Not
bad.
going to defend it. It was funny to me that you both struggled with different fights in this after hearing you complain about these games not being hard enough.
I didn't dislike it because I struggled. I hated it because it was boring.
Okay.
Yeah.
There was some talk from both of you, like you had to keep fighting them over and over again. Maybe it's because of the lack of skippable cutscenes. Maybe it's something else. But I was going to say, if it was finally hitting like a wall for difficulty and that was going to be a sticking point, that was going to be a problem for me.
Well,
no,
yes and no, though. Because any difficulty was artificial, which is going to get into actually kind of my largest point about the whole thing is, yeah, you can be like, oh, this is too easy. I'm going to go fight the third or fourth or fifth gym right off the bat instead of just the first one. Well, that's just us needing to artificially inflate the difficulty. It's not a curated experience. And to me, that was the problem with this open world. Some of it's good. So that's why I was confused about this setup, but we'll get to some of the good stuff. Overall, though, Pokemon has worked for me in the past because it's curated and built pretty meticulously. You go on the route, you fight trainers on the way, you level up.
Yeah.
They're tailored until they started getting too easy in some of the later iterations. They're tailored to be like at your level and to provide the experience that you need to go to the next step. This is not there. I mean, there are trainers in the world. You can ignore them. The open world just kind of feels sort of lifeless. And then, yeah, I mean, you can go in any order, but it just the whole thing sort of feels artificial.
One of the biggest things they could have done with this and should have done with this was scalable difficulty, which is you can tackle the gyms in any order. And I think we even talked about this in the lead up to it. Like the Pokemon Red anime addresses this, where he goes and fights Brock, and Brock's like, oh, you're brand new, so I'm going to use these 2 Geodudes instead of my level 56 Onix. And you're like, oh, cool.
And probably how they would be in real life.
And it's like, well, then how do you account for it? It's like, well, you'd build 8 teams. So it's not super hard. You just go, okay, if it's the first gym, it's this. The second gym, it's this. And then you let them explore in any order you want. Maybe you go for certain types first because you have a team of a certain nature. That would have been a lot better than this because there is no guiding factor whatsoever, and it's too much in that direction. Now, I will say, I have grown very weary of the previous formula where it's like, I'm going to fight 14 trainers on this route. Hell, you can see it in the next videos that we're doing in Pokemon Quetzal, where it's like, I'm tired of fighting random trainers. I'm fucking done with it. Especially because almost all of them are forced. They're all blocking your fucking path with their line of sight. So, like, I don't need to go back to that either, but I need a little bit more form than this game had.
Yeah.
And I don't even mind required trainer battles if it's something like you're going through a hideout in the big team hideout, and it's part of the story. Like, it makes sense. You're going to be running into a lot of grunts.
Yep.
They're like,
those are
fortifying the place. That's fine. I mean, maybe a little less on the trainer route, but again, that is supposed to be there to get you ready for the next part. So I don't know if I hate that either because it does have a level of challenge and reward of like you have to plan your way through your route and be really strategic. And this game, I mean, it's just gone now. It's been gone.
I'm
but
weirdly okay with it. Like, yeah, it is frustrating. Like, thinking of some of the caves in Red Blue, where you're just like, oh my god, and especially at the level that you're at when you go into that cave, there's like 15 million trainers in the way.
And random encounters.
Yeah.
So all of that is just like, okay, way too much in that direction. And when there's story purpose for it, I don't mind it as much. But when it's like, I'm going to fight my 14th preschooler on this route because they happen to be here with one Pokemon I'm going to beat the shit out of. It's like, why am I spending a half an hour on this? Just take me to the next gym then.
See, I there's a balance for me. I like a little bit of that because I think the equivalent is you're playing a different RPG, Witcher or Dragon Age or whatever, and you're just going straight from boss fight to boss fight. And to me, you lose something in the experience of that and like the journey of it. And that's what I felt was lost here. Is like, I'm just, for the most part, I'm going from gym to gym. And it's kind of fun to artificially make the things harder. But it also, like, I miss the experience. Like, this isn't it. And I think the future could be open world. I will get to that more. But, like, this was a baby step. So much more work needed to be done. And if this would have been the final product, I would have said, we're not ready yet.
And you can see some of the visions that maybe if they'd had more time could have come to fruition. But instead, as there are several parts of the overworld that I like, which we'll get to, but you still can't help but feeling like it's somewhat empty. There's plenty of Pokemon to see on each route, and there's some interesting landmarks, and like certain places certainly stand out. And then there are others where you're like, well, I'm just kind of running in this area. We have copy and paste every type of land you can think of in every game. There's a desert part, there's an ice part, there's, a green verdant part. So like all the things you can just check off the easiest checklist ever.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's also times where you're like, okay, so if it weren't for the bountiful items everywhere, which was a small plus, so you could pick up things just kind of running around and exploring, and just the sheer number of Pokemon you could come across, there wasn't much else. There were only like 5 to 6 trainers in each route, very few like buildings or places of interest. So in that respect, the open world nature failed because it does feel pretty empty.
It does. And, in the old games, you had like, this is a little bit too much, but like every pixel like mattered. Like they very well put together. And this is just like open, empty, dead landscape. And there are Pokemon, but the behaviors are pretty simplistic. Like if this was like a Pokemon Snap where it's vibrant and lively and unique, then like great, I'm all for it. But like this was not that. They all pretty much, for the most part, they act the same.
Yeah, they don't really do anything or interact with each other. That's another good point about Pokemon Snap. Like, they actually do interact with each other, and if you do certain things in the environment, that can trigger other Pokemon to show up or make one of them run away or something.
Yeah, we don't necessarily need that level, but
maybe
like,
not that,
this was so far in the other direction.
Yeah.
And like, again, it wasn't there. It was like step 1 of 10 that you would have needed to make it really compelling and dynamic.
Right. And I barely played any of Arceus. I got real bored real fast. And it doesn't really feel like it's much of an improvement from what I can tell either. Of like, that game is also really open world. And it's a little surprising that this isn't more of a significant improvement from that. Like, this feels like the first baby step, even though they had Arceus as a backbone, sort of. It's weird.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't know. Every step that I would have thought from Sword and Shield to now make it more engaging, Game Freak has seemed to go in large ways in the opposite direction.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, disheartening for me. And we're so far past the 2 versions being meaningful, by the way.
Oh, this is the least meaningful yet. There's like 2 unique Pokemon.
Stop now.
And they saved it for so much of it for the end game, which I'm so annoyed. Oh, cool. You get these paradox Pokemon. I got Violet because I thought the future ones look cool. Yeah, when you're in the last hour is when that will matter.
Right.
Why save the unique stuff for the very end? Drives me. It just like so often I would just like get like fed up and annoyed.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad for anybody who bought the dual pack. Because it has never mattered less than it does now. There is zero reason for it other than greed.
Yeah, it's like predatory. And you can argue it has been for a while. This is not unique to Scarlet and Violet.
It has been since the beginning, really. But at least you could justify the different reasons, or the different versions. Maybe too much so. Maybe there was too much different where it's like, okay, like you don't need to pander this much to get people to buy 2 games. But again, what the thought process was in the original was this was a way to force people to collaborate and trade and all that jazz. And the best way to do that was to make sure there were only certain Pokemon in each one because you got to catch them all. Well, you can't catch them all anymore, and you wouldn't want to even if you could because there's more than 1,000 now. So that whole idea has become redundant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that pretty much sums it up on the bad. It was just like poorly put together experience overall. Now, that's not to say it is without its bright spots. It is still a Pokemon game, which is probably the best thing it has going for it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that hit all my bad. Was that, do you guys have anything else that like I didn't mention? Because I know I just talked for like an hour.
I don't think I have anything else. That pretty much hit everything I had.
Here's the thing the 2 of you didn't do. Online. Because I can tell you one other flaw in this game is the fact that Nintendo in general just is garbage at online. There are certainly times, though, when you see, especially with more AI and stuff, where it's like, okay, now we have, like, the big news of the day was there was, like, an entire Discord where it was being, I think it was the Pokemon Discord, one of the official Discords where it was being run by, like, somebody who was getting child pornography and trying to meet up with people on the server. So you can see why Nintendo has always been very protective of its online capabilities. So I cut them some slack. It's the same with like friend codes and stuff. They don't want you just connecting with anybody. So I get it to an extent, but like the online infrastructure is not very good either. It's unreliable. If you're playing locally, you still have some times where you can't connect to each other properly, which is odd. When you're online, it's still kind of a mess. Trying to do raids, which are really fun at the highest level, still take like an awful amount to try and search and reload for. God forbid it's not one of the first 8 you see, because you have to wait a minute to reload them, and then when you do connect, it could be another 5. So it's for a game that sort of seems like it wants to continue to push the online features of it. It doesn't have a good system in which to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that's the direction they seem to be moving in, this like co-op, this like open world. The thing about open world is like there's a reason that everyone and their mom is doing open world games now, and it's not because it's a harder game to develop. It might be challenging to do a really good open world game, but open world, throw some shit on a map, like it's almost like you're making the player do more work than like you bothered to do if you do a shitty open world game. And that's kind of what this is. Shitty open world game where the co-op isn't really realized, the exploration doesn't really work for the most part. I'm just so disappointed.
We talked about like Elden Ring's success and Skyrim and plenty of other games having success with environmental storytelling. There is none of that in this game whatsoever. Like there's a lighthouse one time, kind of is important. And again, a couple environments have a few neat spots, but there's nothing about it where you go like, oh, wow, like I just stumbled upon this. I wonder what this is about. Or it's all focused solely on the Pokemon in each area. And while there are a few things about that are good, it also just leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a few things I want to say are good.
I do too.
Ready for hot take number 1? These are the best starters in the franchise, and I don't even think it's that close.
Whoa, that is a hot take.
Hot take.
Yeah.
Best starters in the franchise, particularly not just because of the first stage or the third, but easily the best second stage starters, because you can't even name about 10 of them over the course of the series if I asked you right now. We had one the other day in Quetzal, the one that turns into a Teleon. It wasn't that for very long because we leveled it past the second stage, but both of you looked at it and we were like, what the hell is that? I don't even remember that. So for me, I love the personality of all 3. The typing's interesting. I like all 3 stages of each of the 3. Like, I'm actually kind of impressed. And the one thing that is not new to Scarlet and Violet, but has been a trend more recently, is each starter has their own like unique moves and stuff going for them, which is so much better than the old days of being like, well, I have a water type. I guess I'm teaching it Surf. Everything will have Surf.
How often did you want to trade out your previous starters? I would say half the time. They're supposed to be great. They're your starter. They're your buddy. But like you come across a better fire type and you're like, well, I guess it's it. This one, forget the name. I did the fire alligator thing. Carried me through.
Fuecoco.
Carried me through fights when like, if it wasn't for him, my team would have been decimated because of the special move. Because like you get him going early, and his thing was he hits with fire, and then every time he uses it, his special attack goes up.
That is
so by the end, I'm just like rolling people because I'm up like 5 stages of special attack. So that was great. I mean, not the best in the series.
I don't know if I can agree, but
solid.
Just because you like one starter from a generation doesn't mean that all 3 were of that caliber.
No,
That's the thing I have to say here.
I will agree. And look, and I'll give you this: how much of this is pure quality, how much is nostalgia? Sure, but like they're red blue. I mean, so iconic, so good. But even like gold silver, which I still hold in very high esteem, the starters are fine. Actually, they're a little lame.
And while I love the starters from Red, viability wise, they're among the worst in the series. Like neither Blastoise nor Venusaur serves any purpose whatsoever. They're both very mediocre.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, while Charizard stands out, it almost stands out too much because we've seen like every version of Charizard under the sun since then. But
yeah, Blastoise sucks, but I mean those cannons.
Yeah, I love the design.
He looked pretty badass.
Design-wise, Blastoise is great. Nothing against Blastoise, no shade here, but the difference is all 3 of these, like you said, do not need to be swapped out. They're all viable members of your team from start to finish, and that was actually really nice to see.
Yes.
Because like I loved Piplup. When it turned into an Empoleon, I wanted to throw it into the ocean, and it would have sunk because it was a steel type.
Yeah. And I think this isn't the first game that did it, but like the fire ghost, the dual typing, that's fun. I like that. Water fighting, right, on that guy, and then grass dark.
Yeah.
It's cool. I like it.
Yeah.
We had a few
it's still not what I want, which is like, what is it, psychic ghost dark, or which it works even less nowadays because of the new typings. But
yeah, fairy throws a wrinkle in that, and also that would give you one that walled off one of the other types that doesn't necessarily work in the beginning, because then your rival might beat the shit out of you, or vice versa. But something different from the standard 3.
Something
but
different would be nice.
At this point, those are the starters, though. We've had 9 gens of them, and now you look back at all of them because of the same type of treating them. But, I mean, it could definitely use a breath of fresh air.
Yeah. I mean, so that was good. I will say...
In general, I love the Pokemon in this game. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. And, again, this reminds me of Diamond Pearl in the sense that almost everything you come across has some role to play, except Palmy. Palmy is terrible and awful. But almost everything you come across is at least somewhat viable, and even if it's not the strongest, it has some kind of quirk or ability that makes it really work, like the Knackle evolution line, where those aren't necessarily the best Pokemon, but it has a unique ability and a cool move that make it so it's like, okay, you can rock on my team because I see your purpose.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I mean, so I've oscillated between, I would say, a 5 and a 9. And when it was a 9 is probably in those like opening hours where I could just go start assembling my team. And that's always the part of Pokemon I like the best. And the ability, in some ways, even though I think the experience is ruined in so many other ways by allowing me to go wherever I want, I did enjoy, like, okay, I read that this Bisharp that goes into this King whatever is like over here. I'm gonna go find him and do this thing now.
Mm-hmm.
And like in the opening hours, I like assemble. I was like, this is gonna be the 6 for the most part that I'm rocking, and that was fun. And it's always a thing I like about Pokemon, and the Pokemon here are good. And the ones that, and they're, we'll get to this eventually. As much as I'm annoyed with this game, I'm like, man, I'm almost tempted to do another playthrough because there's so many good Pokemon that like I couldn't be out. That Steel Ghost one, Chris, that you used, it's like, he's cool. He didn't have a spot on my team, partially because my starter, partially because of Annihilate. But like, I almost want to do another playthrough to have all these Pokemon that I didn't get to use. So big strength for sure.
Because I look back at, let's just use Red Blue as the example. You could look at any gen, but like there are so many wastes of space in Red Blue. And obviously, the designs of Pokemon have had to evolve over time, no pun intended, because like you couldn't go back to the same well. But it's like too many Pokemon games, in retrospect especially, are like, okay, you're on Route 1. Here's your normal flying type. It's going to suck. It's not going to be very good. Here's a bug. That'll definitely be off the team by Gym 4. Here's like some random little fighting type that's not very... So like you got gated off. You had to make a team out of like patchwork nonsense you didn't really care about because they tried too hard to make sure, well, we can't have anybody too strong this early, right? The opposite, I think, is maybe too far in this game, where it's like you can go get something that's really, really good in the beginning of the game, and maybe that skews things, but I still liked that better than the alternative. I really did. I liked being able to be like, okay, look at all this stuff on this route. Okay, I like that one and that one. I'll catch those 2. Now I'm going to go to this one and find 10 new things waiting for me.
Sunk cost always bothers me a little bit in Pokemon, and so it's like, why am I wasting my time on this, whatever it is, the one that always sticks out to me, the little like chipmunk, the ugly chipmunk with the big tail.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not going to spend any levels on him. So then what happens is your starter and like one other one that you like gets super powerful and you ignore everybody else. And so, yeah, this was a better alternative than like wasting time and space with these other piece of shit Pokemon, which is really sad, but it's the truth. So, yeah, I mean, I liked that. I liked that part a lot.
And this is sort of akin to the bad section, so I really shouldn't be breaking the order to bring it up, but it speaks to how good the Pokemon were this generation that I found myself wondering why the gym leaders didn't use more from this area. Like, they keep bringing in other ones from previous gens, and I'm like, okay, that's fine. I don't want it to be all new Pokemon, but, like, one of the core experiences was, like, at least the signature was supposed to be from the new region. And, like, 4 of the gym leaders had an old Pokemon as their star. And they were using it to show off, terastallizing, which, fine, whatever, but... Instead, it was like, I don't want you to have like an Altaria. That's like 6 gens ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Have something, one of these cool new ones that I had to overcome because it's super strong now.
Yep.
So it's a pro and a con for me because I'm like, there is so many cool Pokemon out there. I'm like, use them.
Yeah.
Because these gym battles are the only time I'm going to see them. So please do.
Yeah, I totally agree. I liked some of the gym tests. I like the ones that were fun, and I didn't like the ones that I felt like were wasting my time.
Which sounds like a dumb statement, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, like the ones that are creative, and like there was one where it just throws you into like spotting this person on a camera. Took very little time, was kind of unique. I'm like, cool, okay.
Fit the theme.
Yeah,
And I didn't really find her to be obnoxious. I mean, she's over the top, and I didn't like her, but I thought she fit the role she was supposed to, and the challenge was along that too, where it was like, this is dumb, I have to just find some guy, but like it's sort of like, where's Waldo? So cool, fine. Again, it didn't overstay its welcome.
And there was one gym with like a fighter chick where the test was just like fights, and you just fought the fighter chick.
Same
Who
with
was
Ghost
hot, too. I was like, it's a Pokemon. I don't know. She's probably like 14 actually.
Made you feel some kind of way.
She looked like an adult. Yeah, so that was good. The terrorization,
good overall.
Good overall,
except for the cutscene.
Cutscene was annoying.
Cutscene was obnoxious,
especially in the raid battles where it's taking up actual time. It's bad enough it's wasting your time in general, but when you're on a clock and you're trying to win a battle in a set amount of time, please don't make me waste time watching a 15-second transformation.
There's a small part of me that feels like they bit off more than they could chew with Mega Evolution, where everybody got their own unique design, and then the last gen was just making them big.
Yeah,
and now it's like they get the same crystal thing for every type. So I missed the Mega Evolution, but this was still cool. Getting to do this new type and a little bit of a power boost, and I mean for competitive especially, which I don't care as much about.
Right,
but it was neat.
What a breath of fresh air for competitive, because you can use terrestrialization in so many ways. You can use it offensively to further bolster a type, or to fill in for one you don't normally have. You can use it defensively, so like anything that's 4 times weak, like a Garchomp, you can get rid of that weakness no matter what you turn into. You can use it to like change matchups unexpectedly, and more importantly, you don't have specific Mega Stones for it or like Dynamaxing items. It can apply to anybody, even not third evolution. So you can use it on anybody, anytime, which is great for a strategy perspective, because now you never know when it's coming. You have to play around certain things, but you're not quite sure, and you can adapt on the fly. Before, it was like if you didn't like your Mega, if you had a really bad matchup for it, but that was the one that you had set to Mega, too bad, because that's the one you attached it to. So I love the versatility. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, and so I liked that, and and this goes into the other thing I liked. The raids are actually something that will keep me revisiting this game, maybe further beyond any other Pokemon game that I've considered like done. I've never, like, the battle towers and stuff are fine, but once I'm done with everything, it's like I'm done. This is like when they do a new event, like the Greninja 7-star raid. If you get together with friends, it's like it's fun actually.
Yeah.
That part, and I was watching you guys play it, and the strategy that went into even just choosing the team that would go in, I was like, that's cool.
Yep.
And I want to be a part of that, and the terrestrialization matters for that. So that's all cool. I like that a lot.
That was really well executed, other than the online issues. And of course, because that's nothing worse. Doug mentioned a little bit ago in chat, where it's like, yeah, it's even worse if you do manage to connect and then get booted in the middle, because then you don't get the rewards, or you don't have a team of humans to help you finish it, etc. So there's issues with it, but in concept and in some execution, that's the most post-game stuff I've cared about in a while.
Yeah.
Like Platinum is the game I always go back to as the gold standard for things to do after a game is done. But you're right, there are certain aspects of that, like a battle train, tower, all those things where it's like, those are fun, I guess, for a little while, but they're not going to come back for more later.
Yeah.
Once you beat them a little bit and get enough points to get some of the rewards, you're like, okay.
Well, I took my whole team to level 100 in like red, blue, and gold, silver, and let me tell you what slogs that was.
Yeah.
But it was like, why? I just like did it to do it. Now there's like a reason, like level 100, and even then you're maybe not set for. You still need to think about matchups and
movesets.
Yeah.
Coverage,
for these 7-star rates
setup,
continuing to change,
like ability and like moves that aren't just attacks, because it's not even just enough to have type covers. Now it's like maybe we need to look at having light screen and reflect. Maybe we need something that gets rid of status effects. Maybe we need a rest or wish or things that'll heal. Like all of it requires so much more planning. Now, if you follow the online stuff, there's obviously a meta. Like anything else, everybody tries to find the quickest stuff that works the best. But truthfully, it's a lot more fun to just puzzle it out ourselves. Like you saw me and Nick that day, kind of spent an hour like, all right, what Pokemon do we have that could work? What abilities? Like and we made a team that wasn't meta, but got the job done.
And in non-competitive Pokemon, the times where status moves have really mattered for me have been few and far between. Like the Swords Dance, for example. Now it does for these 7-star raids. Like that stuff, that building really does matter.
Yep. All
and
the setup moves.
Thank you for making your gameplay actually matter. That was brilliant of you to do.
Yeah, because what did you take before this in a random playthrough? Maybe like Thunder Wave, because Thunder Wave was really good with its 100 accuracy. Like a handful of status moves, maybe to help catch. But beyond that, I mean, in a battle, you're just like, I got to hit as hard as I can, as quick as I can.
Well, and it went both ways. Anytime an enemy Pokemon used like fucking Tail Whip, I'm like, thank God. Thanks for using that stupid move and not an actual thing that's going to harm me. And I just wipe the floor with them.
And now in these fights, you get down a couple stages of defense or something. You're like, oh, shit.
Yeah,
like,
you're like, time to give up.
yeah, well, I guess this run's over because that can be debilitating more so than damage sometimes. Mm-hmm. It's difficult. I'm going to get to the score soon. It's difficult for me with this because this is the most fun I've had playing a game since Gen 6. This is Gen 9 for those of you who are less familiar with the series. So like that means wasn't a big fan of Sword Shield at pretty much any point and didn't really love Sun Moon either.
Sun Moon is probably the worst.
It
Pokemon
might be my least favorite, even though there are some things it does well and it's well made overall. I just find no life in it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So even though this has plenty of problems and things that need to be improved upon, it's also the most fun I've had. And I played this quicker than the two of you did, but like I was just having a lot of fun going around exploring. Even though there wasn't much to see, it was still fun going to a new area, seeing what Pokemon were there, catching more than I've ever caught before. They've streamlined catching in a way. Obviously, this isn't new. It's been building, but like just the ability to catch things, have it give experience to everybody. And also now like the ability to have the things that they drop turn into TMs, I thought was a great touch. Because you can build so many TMs now, and it's just a matter of being like, oh, I need to build Fire Punch. Let me go kill this fire Pokemon that drops the thing. So it gave you incentivization to kind of run around and explore new Pokemon and find out new things on a route. All little stuff, and that's great. Quality of life-wise, I have to give it a part in the good section because it has never been easier to raise Pokemon, to look at and review their EVs and IVs, to change abilities. This is stuff you used to have to breed for. And that was a huge slog, and now you can do it on the fly. So now if you just catch a random Pokemon, you can kind of make it do whatever you want it to do. Maybe you need to do like egg moves and stuff. But in general, you don't have to just be like, all right, I'm going to breed these for 17 hours till I get the one that I like that has the nature I want and the stats I want.
Yeah, that was huge. So that's what's with the ways that I feel like you don't care about me at all. There were plenty of like quality of life and the ability, for example, to go in and just click remember moves.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Mind-blowing from where we came from.
It's so stupid to think that we needed a separate person to remember moves, a separate person to delete moves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They were in different cities back in the day, and you couldn't forget HMs. Remember HMs? We don't need those anymore either, thankfully.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, boy, it seems silly now because it's been a while when we've had some of these changes in the works for a bit, but, like, you look back, it's like, why, it's hard to go back now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very true.
Just baking them into my dumb-looking motorcycle Pokemon, making that be the ability that gets me more places, more things to traverse. That's a lot better than needing like 8 different HMs that have no battle utility except for Surf.
I still don't know how I feel about moving away from you have a TM and you have it forever. I liked that. And I wonder if there's some kind of like crafting mechanism that they can do in the future where you still like, okay, you need a fire piece or a thunder piece and you can go get those, but to build something other than TMs. I don't know.
Yeah, I can see that being evolved further. The difficulty for me is like when we had unlimited TMs, I realized I was just teaching those moves to everything. Mm-hmm. And that became kind of annoying because I'm like, all right, every Pokemon's going to have Aerial Ace now because that's good coverage if they have it. It covers some of their holes. So like, then I have 5 of 6 on my team that have Aerial Ace or Brick Break or like some of the more common TMs.
Yeah.
So I don't want to go too far back in that direction either, but I think they could still improve this even further.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair.
Because I think it was nice, because you could kind of just, if you wanted to get more of one TM, you could pretty easily, but it wasn't just like, all right, you have Aerial Ace, now you have Aerial Ace forever. And you're like, okay,
yeah,
cool, I guess, but you had to do a little work. I don't know if I have a ton else. I will say this series has increasingly, unfortunately, catered to children. And for them, I can see them getting a lot of value out of the Team Star storyline. It has nothing to do with anybody over the age of like 8. But for kids, I was hoping Dave might be here because I wanted to get his take on like how his son has been interacting with Pokemon so far. He's playing the Let's Go ones and not this yet. But like, I just wanted to get a take from him on like if my impression of that's right. We would much prefer this have a more adult tone to it, but it's clear they're not going in that direction. If anything, it's the opposite now.
Yeah, and I don't even need like. I would just always go back to black and white. I would not necessarily say that was adult, but it was more complicated than what we get. And the truth is, I don't know if kids give a shit. I would love to take a poll of a 6-year-old being like, yeah, the Team Star storyline really resonated with me. And I'm just clicking through the dialogue to get to the fighting.
I don't know if you remember how much of an asshole a 6-year-old can be, but I guarantee you plenty of them have experienced bullying already in their life. I would say the majority.
I know. I just don't know if they care about the story, period, like whatever it is, or if they're just clicking through to get to more fighting.
That's my thought,
I would have
too.
loved to see that when I was a kid. To see that in somebody else in a video game, I would have liked that. Now, again, I'm not saying it's good.
I think I would have too, but I don't know if I would have cared as a 6-year-old. I probably would have cared as like a 8 or 9, maybe 10-year-old. But, so maybe it'd be interesting to see what that looks like across the age range.
I didn't abhor it. Like, it was, again, the lower stakes of like, it's this bullying and it's this thing with the school.
Yeah.
And it never really grew past that until the very end, and you get some time travel stuff.
Which is the last thing I wanted to put in the good. I really liked Area Zero. Other than its technical issues, because the game didn't ever chug more than it did there, except maybe in some of the Ice Mountain stuff. Technically, it struggled to load all of this stuff that was happening in the inside of this volcano crater or whatever we were inside. But the mystery of all these new Pokemon that you're like, these are familiar, but they're different. You kind of mentioned them earlier.
Yeah.
And I got to be honest, I wasn't really expecting this. I mean, I can't call it a twist, but like, this was kind of dark for a game that was not dark whatsoever, to be like, okay, yeah, that professor you saw, they're dead.
Yeah.
And so Arvin, you're going to be sad because you thought they just neglected you, but they died. And we're going to have to figure out how to stop their rampant AI now because they've gone haywire. It took this to a level that the rest of the game didn't even approach for me, but I was like, okay, I'm in now.
See, you put it in a good way. I have very complicated feelings about the end because you're correct, but then I'm sitting there being like, why did we save all of this for the end? This reminded me so much of Metal Gear Solid 4. You beat a boss, and then they go into a 30-minute backstory of the boss you just killed. I don't give a shit anymore. They're dead.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yep.
So what does it matter now what the backstory was? I can't even feel complicated going into the fight because they're dead already. So that was this whole thing with Arvin. I was like, okay, I mean, I guess, but it's too late. And very complicated. I loved all the new Pokemon. That was cool. I really liked the Iron Valiant one. Super cool with the double blade. I had to catch that. I spent way too much time looking for that one.
They're hard to find sometimes. I liked rolling with your squad. They all have like dialogue as you're running through it, so you're learning more about it. And now again, why is this exclusive to the last 8% of the game?
And why do they take you off your fucking this is huge area if you do want to explore, which I think they just want you to go point to point. This is a cool new area. I want to explore. You're on your slow ass feet the whole way.
Right. They want you to explore later, but it's like, I want to explore now as I'm going through.
And I was like, you had one good thing. I liked getting on my motorcycle. I enjoyed that, at least in this open world. Now you've taken that too.
It's a little bit too big to have taken that away.
Yes.
Especially because the whole game has had it.
And you're too slow. You're too slow, and it's like I was like, what are we doing right now? You are ruining this kind of cool thing.
All they had to do was make it so you couldn't float. Because they didn't want you just diving down to the center of the thing.
Yeah.
In fact, they actually put you back up top, and there was dialogue if you did it on purpose or on accident. So just like your motorcycle got injured on the way in, because they showed you going into the thing, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, probably not strong enough to fly, especially with 4 people. So we're gonna have to hoof it, but at least we can kind of ride on him. That would have been enough. Just that. You can't climb up the walls, but you can at least traverse it quicker. That's all you needed.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. Let me the other maybe the part of the game where I felt the most engaged was you beat the champ. This will be a spoiler, I think, for you, Kayla. You beat the champion, which is fine. It's all very normal. Mm-hmm. And then you're like, oh, your rival is awesome, and she actually destroyed me. So now you're gonna fight her, and like it wasn't even close when we fought. She blew me out of the water, and I was like, "This is interesting." Because I liked what's her name, Nimona.
Nimona, yeah.
I like Nimona.
As far as rivals go, she made the biggest impression in a long time, in gens and gens of Pokemon.
She's just female Goku or Pokemon Goku, but I don't necessarily mind that. It's the right temperature for my rival. I want her to be kind of annoying in a good way. I want her to be somebody who pushes me to get better. I don't need her to be an absolute asshole, although Gen 2 always has a special place for me with that. But like, I don't need whatever the friendship squad was from XY. Never, ever ever again do I want to see that shit. So like this was a good balance for me.
I would love an antagonistic rival like 1 and especially 2, but she was not antagonistic, but she's like kind of dumb, but in an interesting way, and like she doesn't get a lot of social interactions. Like I forget what it was, but somebody's telling, like, I think Penny at the end is telling like a sad story, and she's like, "Oh, that must have been great for you," and she's like, "No,
hey, when can we battle again?" You're like,
"Did you just hear what I
no,
said?"
I'm pouring my heart out here.
Yeah. So I liked her, and I liked that twist of like, yeah, your rival, you don't dispatch them before the Elite Four and they're all sad. It's like, no, they actually kicked the Elite Four's ass, and they're awesome.
And they did exactly what I wanted from the rest of the game with her. She takes teams that are supposed to be around your level to fight you at that point because she's too strong for you. We don't even realize how too strong because, like, who knew that she was quote-unquote the champion or the last person you fight, right? Like, she was going to be important, but we didn't know she was going to be the last, right?
Yeah.
So, like, to have her be the person who goes like, oh, well, I'll have to go get a couple of these Pokemon because you're not ready for this yet. All you had to do was do that for the gyms.
Yep.
It was right there.
Yep.
Like they already did the balancing work for her. Why didn't they just do it with all the gyms? I don't know. Or even like the teams for that matter. Some of the star raids, same thing. I don't know.
Yep.
Like, it's not that hard because you usually do it over the course of a game with multiple rival fights. We were just looking at that in Emerald because of the Quetzal playthrough where it's like, here's May when you have one Pokemon. Here's May after the second gym. Here's May after the fourth gym. So you just have to do a little bit more in between. You decide when each Pokemon they have is going to evolve and when to add a new one to make it harder. That's all you... So it's not like you have to do 8 full unique teams for every gym leader. You just have to be smart about it.
That's my concern with this game, though, and that's why I have been pretty harsh, is because they're going, to me, in the wrong direction, because for all the things that they have done right, they just don't seem to care as much. And the pervading sense to me is we know we can make money by putting in 50, 60% effort. And that is really concerning for me looking forward.
Yeah, it's time to start looking at overall impressions. And as a result, I think you've hit the nail on the head where it's like, what about this do I like? What about this do I dislike? The low effort in many areas, certainly a dislike. The fun I had playing it at times, a like. Because again, we had gone 0 for 2 the last 2 generations to where even I was like, do I really want to play this? That has at least been rekindled, although I'm hoping for much more. The question is, are we going to get much more? Or because these games sell like hotcakes, is that minimal like drip feed effort going to be what we get in the future?
It's just like so anti, and I know it's Game Freak, but like Nintendo has never been about like, yeah, just give them whatever. It's like Breath of the Wild 2 could have made $1 million. $1 million. I don't know why I said that.
Could have sold 6 copies.
It could sell like hotcakes, but it's delayed and delayed and delayed because they want it to be excellent. Where is that with Pokemon?
Right.
And it's not even that this was mediocre in some ways. It's just outright bad. I don't even care so much about some of the technical performance problems. Like Chakrock mentioned, some of the glitches are just funny. Like when I have a Pokemon evolving and there's a second one next to it for no reason, which I did actually see myself once. Yeah. I'm like, that's stupid. But it doesn't really affect my feeling about it. What does affect my feeling is a world that doesn't feel fully realized, an experience that doesn't seem fully fleshed out. That's the stuff that leaves me with a negative impression of a game that I did still enjoy my time with.
Yep.
So then it's like, where do I give it a number? And I haven't even really settled on what I'm going to give to it. I had an idea coming in. I wasn't just like, what am I going to rate it? But like, I haven't even given my final answer yet.
Michaela, why don't you go first on score?
Oh,
I feel like you always go last.
That's true. Now you can set the bar.
Oh, good.
If you give it a 4, I'm going to be like, oh, shit.
I have a score, so if you need time, I can take it.
I'm not going to give you time, even though I could have a score.
I think I've got one.
Okay.
I think I have a score.
Go for it.
Yeah, so this game is kind of a hot mess. I mean, there are a couple things that are interesting, some things it does well, except a lot of that good stuff is on the back burner until the very end, which is not great. The technical issues I can't get over. Like, I mean, some of the glitches are kind of funny, but it sort of is a testament to the quality of like, it is such a buggy, messed up game. Clearly, there wasn't enough effort put into it to clean out a lot of these issues before releasing, and it just, I don't know, it's not great for 2023, 2022, whenever this game came out.
Yeah, I feel like the glitches were like more of like a metaphor for their approach to the game than there was nothing game breaking or anything.
No, like my game didn't crash or anything. I had the one glitch that took like a minute of my life
That's the worst that I've heard.
Yeah.
And on occasion, even some of the most well-crafted games have had that problem. Like the save issue with Twilight Princess, a game that we would hold to that high Nintendo standard, had a game-breaking, like, save-altering glitch until a couple months after release. So, like, anything can happen. But like you said, this felt more like a referendum on the overall experience than it did about, like, oh, it stopped me from playing.
Yep.
Yeah. So with that said, I'm giving it a 6. 6 out of 10. You know, there are a couple things it does well, but there's just a lot of negatives that drop the score for me, and it impacts the quality in my experience. It was fun playing with friends, but like I would not have played this if I didn't have friends to play with, probably, or to at least enjoy it with, which is kind of a big deal because I usually play Pokemon every single gen. It rolls around. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna get it anyway. This time I really was not sure, and I don't know if I would have if I didn't have other people to play it with.
And we had to, in a nice way, like force you to finish it for this review.
That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. I didn't know you were gonna go that low. So my review, I played Cyberpunk, right? So, you know, game-breaking bugs were around every corner. You get a quest that, like, the person is just not there. And you don't know where they are, and they're not just going to show up if you reload. So, like, you better go back, like, a couple hours. So I was going to, again, I went from between, like, a 5 and a 9. And I think I'm going to settle, even though it's just the average of those, on a 7. Still Pokemon. No, I'm sorry. A 7, and I'm going to deduct a 0.1, but then I can't have it be a 6.9.
No.
So I'm going to go 6.8. That's my final 6.8.
Okay.
Final score.
And you said 6 was low.
Yeah, this is 0.8 more than that. On a 100-point scale, this is 8 points.
It's fair.
And I think, yeah, it is still Pokemon. I did still enjoy it. I still felt that feeling, just less than, well, I can't say maybe ever before. I played Sun Moon. But yeah, not the direction I want to see the series going in.
Yeah, I mean, team building is always like the highlight of the games for me, but yeah, everything else surrounding it this time, like the package wasn't really there in a way that I would have liked to see.
So instead of playing like Uranium, which is just a fan-made game, and
oh
having
my God.
such a good time with that.
Uranium's fantastic.
Pretty disappointing.
Yep.
Here's the profound statement. Ready?
A 10. No, I'm just kidding.
Cyberpunk struggled because of its ambition. Like it was trying to do so many things in such a big world with such graphic fidelity that I think its failures were almost inevitable. This struggled despite its lack of ambition.
Yeah.
And that's troubling because if it had been over the top, I think you could be like, okay, like this was so ambitious as something the series hadn't really tried before, so I can see why it had the failings it did. But Arceus existed. And let's be honest, they also kind of had a trial run for this in Sword Shield with the one big open area that game had. Not to this level, but still, they had a couple different chances to sort of test the waters on this. So this coming out this unpolished with a Nintendo name attached to it, even though it is more Game Freak than them, like I had to dock it a whole point because of that. Yeah. Because Arceus and Sword Shield did exist, could have been a template for what not to do, and instead seemed to be not included in the equation at all.
Yep. Yep.
I'm giving it a 6.5. I did not think I was going to be
the
second of the three. I was between
weird.
I was between a 6 and a 6.5, so it wasn't like I was like a 7. I was like, I'm going to put myself below Sean. Truthfully, I was between those two. It's kind of funny when Michaela said a 6. And the only reason I'm going 6.5 is for the reason I mentioned before. I did have fun, even though there weren't many ways the game was giving me to have fun.
Yeah.
What I did enjoy, I enjoyed a lot, and one of those was team building and catching. And again, I've never been a big catch guy. So for me to latch onto the idea of being like, cool, I can catch this, and like if it's interesting, all these experience candies, I can bring it up to speed right away. I don't have to grind to get it back to the level of my team. Oh, I don't actually like it. Well, cool, I'll put it in the box, and I can experiment, I can mess around with things, I can try things out in a way I couldn't ever before. And there's a ton of Pokemon out in the world just for me to go find and catch and interact with. In that way, the game is a colossal success. We then spent 40 minutes on the ways it was a failure. So I don't think I can give it a 7 because a 7 to me is a good game. And this is not a good game. And that sucks because, again, there are some things it does well, and I did enjoy it. But it's just too many issues. If it was just the technical ones or just the world feeling empty, maybe I can get it to like 7, 7.5, but it has both of those glaring flaws.
Yeah. I can't believe I gave it the highest score. I was like... Although, to be fair, if I wasn't the only one going on a 100-point scale, I probably would have landed on a 6.5
6.8 rhymes
well.
to a 7.
But...
That feels like, not to go full circle, but the IGN review feels like that was a 9, that was an 8.6 on Hogwarts. And they're like, well, we don't do half or decimal points anymore, so I guess it's a 9 because it's not an 8.
Exactly.
And you're like, okay, well, that's, I guess, why you can round. That's why we do whatever we want to with our scale, because fuck it.
I miss when they used to go 100, because I feel like that nuance, like, that's important for people who really know.
Yeah.
That little bit of difference matters sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to make a numerical score, you might as well make it as precise as you can.
Yeah, exactly.
Otherwise, what's the point?
So, I mean, our average is like a 6.4?
Yeah, right around there.
Like, right?
Yeah.
Yep, which is not very good.
No, out of
No,
10?
it's-
No.
That's one of the lowest reviews of anything we've actually taken the time to do a full episode on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of Space Jam 2, which will probably never be beat. Most of the time, if we're going to spend a full episode on something, it's going to be because we all enjoyed it and it was pretty good. Here, we all kind of enjoyed it and it wasn't very good, but it's also Pokemon and it's a series that obviously matters a ton. So here we are with a 6.4 aggregate.
Man, again, it tells you, like, so the 6.8 score is like what they have. They can do a bad job with it, but it's still like is Pokemon.
Yeah, and that core experience is good.
Drags it up, but yeah.
Because that's what I'm playing them for. I'm not playing them for the story. I wish the story was better, and I missed the black-white, like you mentioned. That was the pinnacle. But it's not why I'm there. If I want a rich RPG story experience, it's not this franchise. But I need it to not be absolute garbage, too.
Yeah.
It needs to not distract. You know? At the very least, it just needs to be kind of like wallpaper, but not anything bad.
Yep.
Chakrok says, I guess what we learned is we're still waiting for the perfect Pokemon game. Well, we're not going to see that. But I would be satisfied with one of Diamond Pearl or Black White's caliber before the time I'm drawing Social Security, which also will not exist by the time I'm that age. Well, that's not the point.
Because, like, Ruby Sapphire was and the original Diamond Pearl, to me, was, like, kind of after the... And then Black White came out, and I was like, it was an epiphany, and I loved it.
Loved it.
And I want that experience again.
I do, and it's sad to me that we are 4 gens, 5... What gen are we in
4. Now? That was Gen 5.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're 4 gens away from that now, and they haven't even tried anything close to that again. I'm like, guys, you had it. You had the template. It's right here.
We are so far away from that's the next game that's going to get remade. Think about that.
I want it remade
and it's probably
now.
not going to be remade well. So
Yeah.
you also need to prepare yourself for that
I have to
possibility.
say, I don't know what it was. I didn't even finish the Diamond Pearl remake.
I did, but it lost a lot of what made the original so good.
Yeah.
New
Yikes.
soundtrack was nice.
Oh, we didn't talk about that. The music was horrible in this, like offensively bad for most of it, especially the chant song.
Well, you hate that in general.
I just
can't do
I
it.
have to
I have
turn
to
it
turn.
off.
I have to mute it. I can't listen to it. I can't
if I
stand
have
it.
to turn the music off.
I like the Team
It's
Star
bad.
music, all iterations of it. The Penny fight was surprisingly good. I also like that we had an all EV trainer.
So, of course, I mean,
It's
I like
the first
Penny.
time it's happened.
I mean, the story stuff with her, like the big twist. I was like, get out of here. You're
There were
stupid.
3 twists,
There was
excuse me.
3. Yeah, of course, right.
yeah.
Awful.
Clavel is
All
not
of it was
Clavel, but
stupid.
he is Clavel. But he's not whatever Penny's pseudonym was.
Cassiopeia.
He's not Cassiopeia.
I liked-
Cassiopeia is Cassiopeia.
I liked that.
But it was so dumb, I kind of liked it too.
I liked that he said a thing, and one of your responses was just like, "Yeah, that's impossible."
No.
Yeah, no, that,
Yeah, I
yeah.
totally
Actually,
did
this
that
person,
too.
You're like, "No, you're not."
No, can't be. No,
No,
there's
it's
no
just
way.
wrong.
There were no signs.
I would actually like an improvement on that too. My character felt extremely flat.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like, I don't think voice acting is necessarily the way to go, especially with, I mean, until you can prove to me you can even write,
Yeah.
the voice acting doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right.
But, like, and it was the pinnacle of how upset I felt about this was when they give you the quiz at the end.
Oh my
And I also,
god.
Chris doesn't want to happen.
Yes.
I was like, oh, cool. I'm going to get, like, some good, interesting shades. Like, I don't want to be here because I'm just, like, I want to be the best. I'm just doing it for fun. You know, I think that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, no, you fail. You're not allowed to continue. Try again. I was like, what the fuck? So you have to give answers about, like, your character, but, like, specific and I was like, this is stupid.
Mm-hmm.
I thought for a brief second, because they ask you what gym leader was the hardest, and I said Larry, because I did have a hard time with that fight. And then he showed up in the Elite Four. I was like, did you bring back the gym leader I thought was and then it turns out no. So for a half second I was like, oh, that's kind of a cool idea. Like you take this test and you're like, what was the hard? You're like, all right, now that's an Elite Four member, and it was just happenstance. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
once again, like the failure of what could have been.
Mm-hmm.
Next week will probably be a Suns cast. The trade deadline for the NBA is in 2 days. We may not do anything. We may land Kevin Durant. We may do something on the fringes in between. But either way, between that and the Kyrie drama and everything else, there's certain to be plenty to talk about. So that's probably next week's show, but we'll see. If they don't do anything, I think we're going to have a show. If they make a small move, we might not, because I'm not sure what I'm going to have to say at that point.
Yeah.
If they do nothing, we can rant against James Jones, but we'll see. The next 48 hours will be telling, but probably a Suns cast next week.
And then we're going to do a Fire Emblem review. That's the next review.
I haven't even started it yet.
I'm excited. It's
I'm on chapter 6.
It's good.
Whoa, okay.
You're the furthest out of all of us then.
Yes.
Wow.
I finished Chained Echoes, which actually ended up being pretty good. I recommend it, but not like drop everything and play it. Just put it on your list.
Fire Emblem is not the best, but it's super solid.
Nice.
It's
Okay.
closer to what I want from the games.
It is, I know. So we might be a little bit divisive on that
we
one
might too, yeah.
But it's going to
Oh,
be
God.
like between like I think if I had to predict like 7 and 9 range and not 5 to 7 range like Pokemon. So
That's right.
It's good. It's a
Yeah.
very solid game. I'm enjoying immensely my time with it.
Yes. I have no qualms so far. A couple small issues, but there's nothing where I'm like, oh man, I don't like this, where some of that was immediately obvious in Pokemon. So
Yeah.
we'll
I
see.
agree.
We'll see. Jaguar says, thanks for joining us, Michaela. Come back again sometime. Sorry, she's
Oh,
banned
hey,
forever.
oh,
Yeah, she's
bye,
never gonna be back.
Jaguar.
The only way
Thanks
you
for
can
your
interact
kind
with her
words.
is watching Pokemon Quetzal. That's it. So we'll see it around Space Cowboy. That's the end of the episode. In between shows, you can find us at our website, objectionnetwork.com or youtube.com/objectionnetwork for that very same Pokemon Quetzal thing I just talked about. This upcoming week is going to be interesting. That's all I'm going to say.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see you next time.
Dave's like the stupid kid who like logs into class in like the last 5 minutes and was like, "Oh, I was here the whole time. I get attendance, right?"
Partial credit.
No, Dave, you piece of shit.
That's good. Now I'm going to end the chat so he can't say anything back and
Okay.
the episode.
Great.